Welcome everyone to episode 78 of the Gully Blanchard podcast. My name is Ryan, coming to you from the continent of California. This is a live podcast that is taped on Friday afternoon. It's been a good week so far. I am back to normal after running a 13-mile Spartan race at 9,500 feet of elevation. Got it completed in 7 hours, so that in itself was the accomplishment for me. Other than that, it's been a pretty good week, just getting back in the swing of things here. This was originally a one-man podcast, then it was three. Now it's back to one. So we're doing that, giving you guys something once, twice, maybe 3 times a week, depending on how things go. You can check out all the episodes at gullyblanchard.podbean.com. You can also check us out at nocoastbias.com. Check out all my writing about the Sacramento Kings at royalpain.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, GULLYBLANCHARD. You can also check us out pretty much anywhere you get podcasts: Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Anywhere you can get podcasts is where this is going to be. So, I wanted to talk to this guy for a while. I had him on a podcast about a year ago, roughly about a year ago. It was a good conversation. He is the fighting pride of Austin, Texas. The man from the South Congress podcast and a lot of other different really cool avenues. Cameron Hawkins, welcome back to the podcast, man.
I appreciate it, man. It's good to be on. It's been way too long.
Yeah, man. So where can people check out all the stuff you do? I know you do South Congress. I know you do some stuff with the Torch. Pretty much let everyone know where they can pick up your stuff and what those podcasts are for people who haven't heard them.
Definitely. So South Congress podcast is really something that started a while ago. What it is today, what it's evolved into, is me talking to the best and brightest in Central and South Texas about the things they do, the things they love, and just kind of kicking it with my friends, man. We might get into it a bit later, but I've been blessed enough to where my very best friend now lives in Austin, and we've kind of been apart for the better part of 10 years. You know, he, even though we did college about an hour apart, I was in Texas, he was in Texas State. He ended up coaching in Del Rio for a long time. Anybody familiar with Texas? That's 6 hours from where I live, and a hop, skip, and a jump from the border. So he's actually coaching in Austin now, so we get to do the podcast together every week. It's been really fun, talking about what's going on in the world. South Congress podcast, you can find just about anywhere you listen to podcasts, your iTunes, your Stitchers. It's mainly through SoundCloud if you want to get kind of that instant update, as well as the descriptions and links to things. And as far as Pro Wrestling Torch, thanks to my man Travis Bryant, 8-9 years ago, kind of linking with him, I started to do the Pro Wrestling Torch East Coast Cast, which is a weekly show, which you can listen to at eastcoastcast.com, also iTunes, any other service you have. But a weekly show, 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central, every Wednesday, a live call-in show covering the week in wrestling pretty much. After WrestleMania this year, I reached out to guy in charge, Wade Keller, let him know that, I had some ideas on doing a few different things, and that evolved into You, Me, and Wrestling, which is where I interview just kind of a random fan. Have them fill out a questionnaire, and they come on and talk about the wrestling that they love from the time period they appreciate, the things they like the most, things they didn't like so much at the time, and how they equate that to wrestling today, along with their favorite moments from yesterday and today. And you were actually good enough to be on the show, and you and I just love the same things and appreciate the same things. So it was a really fun conversation. But yeah, You, Me, and Wrestling. If you are a Pro Wrestling Torch VIP member, you can listen to that. I want to say every week, but man, I'm doing so much now. And Wade's been really understanding about that. And so we plan on doing a lot more shows here later in the year. So that's coming. And if you just want to get a taste for what You, Me, and Wrestling is, if you go to soundcloud.com/South Congress, the very first episode with my buddy Josh Pistachio is up, about an hour-long conversation, so you can kind of see how that goes. But yeah, there's that, man. There's the Pro Wrestling Torch Instagram page that I run, where we put up the different shows we have, the news and wrestling for the week, Travis, Rich, and I do Torch East Coast Cast Instagram. You'll find like news, but mainly like a lot of memes and jokes through that. And then if you want to watch the South Congress podcast, we're slowly but surely turning that into a weekly video series. So episode 35 from 2 weeks ago, you can actually find on YouTube. Just search South Congress. You can either subscribe to the South Congress page or the Cameron Hawkins page. So, Ryan, we've been busy over here, man, trying to make this thing work.
Man, I see. That's a lot of different avenues on a week-to-week basis, man. I thought I was doing it. I thought you guys I know you had You, Me, and Wrestling. I know you had South Congress, man, but to pull up and make it turn into like a video outlet that people can watch on a weekly basis, that's going to be a lot of fun. I know there's going to be a lot more challenges that come with that, but I'm sure you guys will knock that out of the park.
I appreciate you understanding that it's a challenge because when we did the episode 35, Ryan, we did it on a Friday, and because we work hard, we got press passes to Comic-Con, so we did that Friday evening and Saturday all day, and so I took all day Sunday and half the day Monday, like editing the show. Like it was a lot of fun. So I like the work, man. I really do. Even if it's just one person at the end of the day telling you they really like what you did, like the work is really important to me, and that's the payoff. Like somebody appreciating what you do and reaching out and saying they like it. But a lot more gray hair since the last time we talked, man.
Man, I know that I know the feeling firsthand. I know we've had some talks in some private DMs. It's been one hell of a year. We'll leave it at that for us both. But let's jump into something, because I am the first one to admit I don't know much about comics. I never really grew up watching them. But Venom is coming out and it's been getting mixed reviews. What were your thoughts on Venom? The whole Tom Hardy thing. I know it's been polarizing from the few people that I've talked to, but is it a movie that you're interested in seeing? Is it something that is a big one for you, or where do you come out with Venom?
Because of what we do, the things we cover, because Travis and I do the Fan by Fan show when that comes up and something like this happens. We go to the Comic-Cons where we're in the mix with the people. I do the cosplay thing from time to time, so it's not something I can avoid. I'd kind of like to, but I really can't. This is my biggest problem with comic book movies. And when I say problem, of course, there's so many of them that I love, so many of them that are great. But my issue is when studios seem to be ashamed that they're making comic book movies. Like, Ryan, you and I are about the same age, man. You remember the X-Men movies were coming out like 2000, 2001. Mm-hmm. And instead of them being in the costumes that we knew from the comics, they put everybody in black leather and in the same costume. They were embarrassed on what they were making. And I'm like, you got to be faithful to what you're doing. I'm not saying you have to tell a word-for-word story that's already in the comics, but with any art, like when you try to put your own spin on it, if at its soul it's not the same thing, I don't think it works. So when we talk about this Venom movie, Venom was, Ryan, I told a guy, you remember when we were coming up, when Venom was a thing, that's when people were saying everything was extreme and everybody was drinking Mountain Dew and flipping skateboards and stuff. Like that was the cool thing to do.
Wait, people stop drinking Mountain Dew?
Well, they
Am I behind the times? I'm sorry.
They should drink less.
Let me take off my Mountain Dew goggles real quick.
And our bodies can't process it the same way. But no, that was kind of the cool thing, was about being extreme.
Yes.
Venom is this hyper-sensed, extreme version of Spider-Man. And so when you have a Venom movie that doesn't have Spider-Man in it, that doesn't have that to play off of, like, what are we doing? Like, you have to have, like, Venom exists as an extension and a counter to what Spider-Man is. And so when you try to produce Venom as a non-Spider-Man character, it's just less effective. And I love Tom Hardy.
As do I.
I really do love Tom Hardy. Like, he's what's the movie, Ryan, with him and James Gandolfini, where Gandolfini's like the low-level crime boss, and he's like, he's not a dullard, but he's,
I know this too.
He's a bit
I know that.
Yeah, he's a bit sick. Because I'm talking about, it
was the second date my fiance and I. It was the second date my fiance and I went on, and she fell asleep during the movie. Hi, Bear. I I will never forget. Damn it to hell. I'm going to ask her, and she's not going to remember either when I see her.
Pull it up right now. The Drop is what it's called.
Yes, that's what. Yes. It was based in like. I want to say it was based in like Jersey or something.
Mm-hmm. And so the character that he plays in that, just the way he can harness that emotion, the way he can go from, to sullen and defeated to in control of his destiny. I think he's amazing at that. The movie where he played the British twins, who are gangsters. Like, I'm a big fan of what Tom Hardy does. And so you hate to see somebody you really like get stuck in a role you know isn't going to stick, and people have been responding to it like that. Like, I'm trying to understand, like, I'm a big fan of Danny Trejo, right? And I listened to his Q&A 2 weeks ago at Comic-Con, and he's a great guy. He's an inspiration. His thing is, I understand people think movies are good and movies are bad. They're critical of them. A lot of people get paid off movies. Like, a lot of people pay their bills because of movies, and that's great. Like, I don't want movies not to happen because a movie is trash. Like, I still want it to exist, but I'm still going to say a movie's trash if it's trash. And this is just one of those things where I'm not super excited about it. I understand I have to see it, but making fun of it is going to be a lot.
Yeah, the thing with Tom Hardy for me, I think he's one of the few actors right now that no matter what he does, I feel like I'm going to check for it. And I don't know if you've seen this Tom Hardy movie, but it's one of my favorite ones he did. It's a movie called Bronson. Have you heard of that one?
So good. He's and really quick, and I'm going to let you talk about it. I don't want to interrupt, but to me, the sign of a good actor is somebody who can act when nobody else is in the room, when they don't have anybody to play off of. And all the times they had him in solitary, and it's just him existing in that world, he's so good. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That was one of the first movies that I saw him in. I'm sure he's been in stuff before that. That was one of the first movies where I saw him, and I was like, oh my God, like this dude, it just was a captivating role that he had in that movie. And then one of my other favorite roles was Peaky Blinders that he was in, which I found that one to be incredibly addicting. Like I was doing cardio, getting ready for the Spartan race on the elliptical, and I was timing it based on an episode of Peaky Blinders. That's how much I got into that show. And then also, obviously, The Dark Knight Rises. He went from heel to babyface in the span of like 30 seconds at the end of that movie, which was incredible. But yeah, he's one of the few actors that no matter what he does, I think there's him, there's Denzel, Robert Downey Jr. Those are like one of the 3 or 4 actors in the world right now I could say no matter what they're in, I'm going to at least have to be talked out of seeing it.
Yeah.
So Venom is something that you're not terribly interested in? Is it just based on not having Spider-Man in there, or is it just something that the way that they're going to tell
really that. It's that, like, a cash grab when you see one.
Okay.
Like, to take the essence of a character and remove it and say, well, we're going to make a movie about it instead. Like, what broke me around, what changed my life, and there's not a lot of moments I can say actually changed my life. When I was in high school, there was this girl I was into. Her name was Stephanie LeBron. I'll never forget her. She's like, thick Hispanic chick because, that was my deal. That doesn't go away either. But anyway.
It's a judge-free podcast.
There we go. So Stephanie was, it was actually, I think the summer after my freshman year. I was home for the summer. And Stephanie wanted to hang out. And we went to go see Catwoman. And my thing was, I'm going to see a Halle Berry movie with Stephanie. It can't get any better than this. Like, this is the closest thing to a threesome that exists. And that movie was horrible. It's the worst movie I've ever seen in person. And from that day on, I was like, I'm not going to see a movie based on how attracted I am to the lead or how interested I am in the character, because they bastardized Catwoman. They took everything that you knew about Catwoman that was important, and they took it out, and they tried to create this new thing that just had no soul. And so, like, this Venom movie, because I'm a big believer in reviews. I think you can still like whatever you want to. I don't judge you for what you like, but I think the reviews are, for the most part, honest. Even if it's just the reviewer's truth, I think they are saying what they mean. And when everybody's saying, like, this thing doesn't seem to have direction, this thing doesn't seem to understand its characters, this thing is off the rails, I'm like, okay, I believe that. I'm going to see it because it's something that, based on this thing that we've built, I have to talk about. But interest, as far as wanting to, nah.
So I want to actually talk about a cash grab in a second, but before we get to that, I know you're talking about certain roles being being bastardized. There was a clip that came out and circulated on the interwebs recently about the Joaquin Phoenix version of the Joker. And I probably am biased due to Australia, but I thought Heath Ledger was my favorite Joker ever, with Jack Nicholson coming second and the Jared Leto from Suicide Squad coming in about 493 in my rankings of all-time Jokers. But what were your thoughts when you saw that clip of Joaquin Phoenix playing the Joker?
It actually didn't change too much. And I'm a big Joaquin Phoenix fan. Gladiator's just a triumph. He's amazing in that. I pretty much like him in everything. I think that I don't, because it's an origin story, and because of how time works, I can be convinced there's a Joker before there's a Batman. I don't have a problem with that. My issue is, like, can you do a full movie based on a villain? Like, Ryan, did you see Split?
No, but I wanted to. I know which one you're talking about. No, it's the multiple personality movie, right?
Yeah. So, and spoiler alert, because I feel like I can spoil it at this point. Have you ever seen Unbreakable with Bruce Willis?
No.
Okay. So Unbreakable was like, 2000, 2001. Split is actually a sequel of Unbreakable that you don't know is a sequel until the last 5 minutes of the movie. Right?
Oh, okay.
But the whole thing about it, they're based on, they're not comic books, but the story is told as comic books. Like, the basis of the first movie is about a comic collector looking for a guy who is supposed to be basically the superhero to the villain. Okay. And then in Split, you don't know it, but it's and of course I forget the kid's name as soon as, like, wow, we have to talk about this stuff, right? But Professor X from X-Men movies. James, somebody, people are gonna kill us for this. But
they understand.
He's fantastic in it. And he plays, like, split personality person, but he's a villain in that. And the thing was, they gave him so much to do that he didn't need a direct antagonist at that point, because he was basically fighting himself. And so I'm like, okay, this Joker thing can be good. You have a great actor. It's just they're literally giving you 3 people playing one villain in the last 10 years. And so I don't have faith in that company, but I have faith in the actor. And so I'm like, okay, this is like Venom. I'm not gonna go see today, but the Joker movie, regardless of how I feel, I'm intrigued enough to where I'll go see that the first day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with me, I'm not going out of my way to see Venom, and I don't know if it's just due to my ties to the original Joker. To me, my favorite Joker. Jack Nicholson to me is the original one, but Heath Ledger being my favorite Joker, I'm definitely going to be interested to see how Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal became. The same way that those first couple of trailers for Suicide Squad made that Jared Leto Joker seem amazing. And then the movie started, and it was horrible. But I'm definitely going to be interested to see how they pull that Joaquin Phoenix Joker version off.
I'd say, and I think it's weird because, like, just how I'm telling you, I don't like how Venom is trying to exist in a world where Spider-Man doesn't. I'm really interested to see Joker exist in a world where there aren't superheroes.
Yeah, because
that's what it seems like is going to happen. And how does? Because again, Joaquin Phoenix is one of those guys I trust to do a role the right way. And it's just like, okay, there's been a bunch of Joker origin stories. Because that's the fun thing about comics too, Ryan. There is not one Joker origin story that's agreed upon. Like, Batman definitely is here because his parents died in hell, and that broke it. Superman's definitely here because his planet exploded and his parents sent him here. You know what I mean? Like, Spider-Man's definitely here because he was bitten by a spider and didn't save his uncle. These things are all considered true about those characters. They've told different Joker origin stories, but there's not one that's agreed on. So it is a thing where they can tell a good story that's completely, out of the blue. Like, they have that ability, but we'll have to see if it works. But I think that I wouldn't put money on whether it's going to work or whether it won't, but I'll go see a good actor try a new role.
So speaking of cash grabs, and this is going to be a good segue here, WWE is emanating tomorrow morning, if I'm not mistaken, from my version of the motherland, the country of Australia. Glory to Australia. Are you excited for this show at all? Because I'm not.
Yeah, it's it's weird to say WWE's putting on a show that's not for us. It's a 3 a.m., 4 a.m. show with a lot of names attached to it and not a lot of story. Like there's the Becky Lynch Charlotte match, which is definitely storyline. There's AJ Styles Samoa Joe, which is definitely storyline. Like I'm not excited about Triple H Undertaker because Ryan, you and I are sports guys. Like, what's the best way to kind of explain this?
This is Emmett's. This is Patrick. This is the one photo on the internet of Patrick Ewing on the Sonics posting up Hakeem Olajuwon on the Raptors.
Yeah, we're not even that far. I think that I'm trying to think of a good. Okay, to me, and I can be swayed one way or another, but this is the nearest example that I can think of. The Chicago Bulls and the Utah Jazz was not a rivalry.
No.
Because Utah never beat Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a rivalry if you beat the other person. And they made it a point to say Triple H never beat The Undertaker. So what am I invested in? Like, why would this be interesting to me? It's not a rubber match. Like Austin Rock, it was Rock, who had been this major star. And the selling point was the thing I've never done is beating you at WrestleMania. Like it's different because these are all-time successes, still technically in their prime. Like you guys are basically both coming out of retirement to settle a thing that's not a feud. It's really weird.
This to me is like the big three in basketball.
Yeah.
Just a couple of dudes hanging on, got an old rivalry. And I can even speak to it being a Kings fan. To me, that Kings-Lakers rivalry was never really a rivalry just because we never beat them. You can argue 2001 about the refs or whatever. I'm of the belief that, look, if you're a good team, the refs didn't blow Game 7 for the Kings. And at the end of the day, if you're really going to be the best team, you should still be able to beat the Lakers. And they had their opportunities to beat the Lakers. But I agree. To me, few things will drive me more nuts about the Sacramento Kings as fans that no matter what the Lakers do, they'll peel it back to that supposed rivalry that never really was because we never beat the Lakers. Like, we never really gave them a good shot. And I do feel the same way about this Undertaker Triple H match. One thing I do find really interesting about the build-up for these, and I do think that they burned the I've never done this card at WrestleMania 27. But for some reason, WWE always seems to not harp on the fact that they had a really good match at WrestleMania 17. Like the way that they spin the story on this, you'd almost think that the rivalry started at WrestleMania 27. But these guys had a great rivalry at 17. And since 17 is such a famous WrestleMania, it goes down as arguably one of the best of all time. I think you and I have a differing opinion. But, I'm really surprised they don't touch on that match more. I wish I knew the answer to that question, but yeah, this isn't one that I'm interested in at all myself.
Yeah, I mean, 17 is always special to me because it was in Houston, and I have buddies who literally came to school, came to football practice, spring practice the next day, talking about, hey, look at this second in WrestleMania. You can see me holding people back while Triple H and the Undertaker fight because they were working security. It was really cool. But it's just a fantastic match, super physical. And, even when they had the WrestleMania 27 match, I'm watching it and I'm like, people are going to say that this is like a 5-star all-time great match. And they were right. It was amazing. But it's just such a long story that I feel like if you wanted us to care, we can talk about 20 years ago or damn near. I have faith in Triple H to put together a good match. Triple H, if nothing else, has always taken care of his body, cares a lot about his craft, and believes in he's too much of a dick not to hold up his end.
Yeah.
So he's definitely going to do everything he can. But Undertaker is, and all due respect, Undertaker has been doing this 30 years. His body shows that. And I think that the fact that Undertaker seemed to get, quote unquote, more athletic in the last 15 years, definitely affected his body. Like his goal was to put on the very best match on the very best show. And, my knees hurt when I get up and I don't have a bump on my bump card, so I can only imagine. Like, I'm not mad at you for getting paid, but that doesn't mean I have to pretend to be interested in what you do.
Yeah, I think with Taker, it's difficult for me because, in every sport that we're fans of, there's always the athlete that hangs on too long. There's, for me, there's Mitch Richmond on the Lakers or Donovan McNabb on the Vikings. The list goes on forever and ever and ever. There's Jerry Rice, not making the Broncos camp or something. And for me, this is what Taker has become now. And I get that you want the payday, and I don't knock a guy for getting paid. It's tough because his matches aren't interesting to me anymore. But I do think that Triple H can put through. I think Triple H and him have a good chemistry to where they can. Triple H does a very good job hiding what Undertaker can't do well anymore. And you see that with the no holds barred match at 27 or the Hell in a Cell match. They can put a lot of dressing around it to make you realize that the steak isn't as good as it used to be. But this match in itself, I'm glad they're wrestling each other in the sense to where I think the match will be passable. But I just feel like he's doing what every wrestler does, where there's always one more match in you. And I wish, and I don't think I should keep wishing this because wrestling is always, with the exception of Punk, everyone comes back. Like Brett came back, Shawn's gonna come back. Taker keeps hanging on, but I want to remember Undertaker as he was, not as he is right now. Like I want to remember that classic match he had with Edge at WrestleMania 24 that I think is criminally overlooked, or the great match he had with Batista, or the two that he had with Shawn, or the two that he had with Triple H, or the one with Punk. I just have a hard time getting excited to watch him, especially at 34. Like for me, I was really bothered by 34 because I thought Undertaker Cena was such a good cash grab because we really hadn't seen it yet. Like we saw it a bit when Cena was doing Thugonomics, but
it would have been on SmackDown.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
Different characters.
Yeah, it was a different character. It was a different time. Cena wasn't the Cena that he was at that time. Like I think that they missed the boat heavy on that. I don't have much of a desire to see him continue to wrestle. Now the gong going off, the pop, the entrance, give me that week in, week out, or save that for every WrestleMania. Have him come out just with the entrance and cut a promo. I just think in 2018 they're going to be able to hide it with smoke and mirrors. It just doesn't interest me anymore, especially after the match he had with Reigns at 33.
Yeah. I understand people's affinity for The Undertaker, but I think that a lot of people who have that, like we talk about, Ryan, they're wrestling fans first before they're sports fans. And so they haven't had to see the actual effect of somebody past their prime hurting the things around them. Because in wrestling, in a lot of cases, like it's just you having a match with one other guy. Like if Undertaker and Triple H have a bad match, we aren't going to shit on Becky Lynch and Charlotte.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to think, oh my God, what is this doing for Cedric Alexander? Like my guy is always Eddie George when he got to the Cowboys. Like that's the first time I remember visually seeing somebody different from what they were at one point. Because Emmitt Smith, at the end of the Cowboys time, like he still had a crazy line to where he could still do some things, but Eddie George was just, it was 2 yards a carry. It was very hard to watch, especially as big as he still was. And that's the hard part, when people still look the part.
Yes.
So you expect that same thing out of them. And they work hard to make Undertaker's hair really, really dark. Like Kevin Nash did that for a long time until he realized he was better off being the elder statesman. But
the silver fox.
Yeah, exactly. When they look like they should still be able to do what they do and they can't, like it's just it's heartbreaking. And again, being sports guys, injury is just a big thing for me. Like I got to get this story off because this is the only place I feel like I can talk about it without somebody I know kind of reaching out. I can't be saying too much. So I work part-time refereeing for an adult rec league, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's 2-3 months ago. It's like 2 months ago, right? And this and you're familiar with like the company on it that makes like the Alpha Brain stuff that Stone Cold pushes.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's based here in Austin, right? So they had a flag team, and they're in good with a bunch of guys. So Jeremy Hills, who's a buddy of mine, he played for UT. His brother's Tony Hills. I don't know if you remember that name. He played
I have
O
not.
line for the Steelers for a while and the Broncos. But anyway, so I'm good with Jeremy. That's my boy. So Jeremy brings his friends out one week, and his friends are Earl Thomas and Jamal Charles.
That's good friends to have.
Yeah, right. And so, like me and Jamal had class together in college, and me and Earl actually lived in the same building. So, and then you go to a school that's 1% black. You're in Austin, so you guys see each other. It's cool. You talk. You remember the old days. So, Earl's out there basically because he doesn't have the whole contract thing's going on, right?
Yeah.
And so he's like, nah, I'm working out here in Austin. I'm just doing stuff, and he went out there, he had a little fun in the rec league. Like, he didn't go full speed with anybody just kind of playing, but he's a real cool guy. And then, like, you see him play, and you see him kill the Cowboys. Like, oh god, this guy just generational talent, all around ability. And he breaks his leg, and the contract he's been fighting for, even though his base pay is good this year, the contract he's been fighting for that he deserves, he doesn't get.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all kind of circles back, man. Like, it breaks my heart knowing that guy's character, like talking to him about the things that he wants, like just really cool conversations with him over the last month and a half, and to see somebody who you value as not only a player but a person go down, it sucks. And so now watching guys like Taker at this advanced age do things that would have been hard 10 years ago, but to see him do it now, it makes me cringe watching him and a few others go out and have these matches. Like, say what you want about Rey Mysterio, but Rey Mysterio started wrestling a different style, still got paid, and he still won. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's watching the Undertaker brings on a lot of emotions, and very few of them enjoy.
Yeah, I felt that way after 30. I've been able to watch 30 back once. I've talked to a couple people that were there. They said it was probably the match they'll forever remember being at. But just the fact of knowing everything that we know, we could tie it back to football with guys that we grew up idolizing. Like, for me, one that I'm always going to tie myself to is Donovan McNabb and Jamal Lewis, because I grew up an Eagles fan. The tattoo is on my arm now that they got the Super Bowl, and I was the biggest McNabb fan in the world. And even Jamal Lewis, like, I loved that punishing style of Jamal Lewis would run through you, he'd run over you, he wouldn't run around you. But to read the article that Jamal Lewis was in on Bleacher Report about how he's dealing with some of the issues of memory loss and things of that nature, it's really tough because these are guys that we have a different connection with, because we have those memories as a kid, and then we have those memories as an adult, and those are something that we're always going to have that. We're always going to have that special, I don't want to call it romantic, but we're going to have that special emotional tie to those guys, even though we've never met them, because those were superheroes. When I was a kid, The Undertaker was a superhero. And to watch him struggle after WrestleMania 30, and you found out later that he had to be hospitalized due to a severe concussion. And, you understand what these brain injuries do to people. You understand CTE and memory loss, and we're learning more about it every day. And then to watch him struggle to get through WrestleMania 33 with Roman Reigns, I think the one with Roman Reigns was the hardest for me, because that was the perfect ending, the same way that I thought 30 was. And I thought 30 was kind of like Old Yeller in the end, without, obviously the Undertaker didn't die at the end, but, the Undertaker had given his body for wrestling for all this time. And, the streak ended. That was the main selling point of him for all these years. And then come to find out, he had to be, brought to the hospital during the show. Vince McMahon left WrestleMania to tend to him. That lets you know the severity of it. And then you fast forward a couple years to WrestleMania 33, and the image that I think is ingrained in everyone's head from that match is them trying to do the rotating power bar or the rotating pile driver spot, and Taker just didn't have it. And that was the time where I'm like, at the end of that match, I was like, dude, just please get up. Please get up. Please get up. Just get up, get out of the ring, be healthy. Go home and be a family man. As we all get older, we understand the value of being more of like a family-oriented person. And Taker's got, little kids at home. He's got a wife, and like it's just tough because on one hand, he's obviously doing this for a reason. There's obviously something there that being in the ring fulfills. And I feel bad, saying like you shouldn't get that fulfillment. I feel bad being the guy that doesn't want him to experience that joy. But at the same time, like, it's not fun watching this guy clearly over the hill of his career still doing it.
Yeah,
it's not a joy feeling for me.
No, it's really not. It's hard to watch, and again, I think that our perspective is different because even if wrestling's not a sport, we understand it affects the body the same way. In some cases, worse because there's no off season. So yeah, I'm right there with you. It's very hard to see.
Yeah, I've always actually been of the belief that I think wrestling, because of the constant grind that goes on your body, I think is the hardest of the physical activity type sports. Like, I do feel that I feel that football is incredibly difficult, but also you're doing football one night a week. Those guys and girls are doing football they're essentially doing wrestling year round. They're riding around. Like, you got to think, you just talked about getting out of bed and your knees hurt. You got to think driving from Sacramento to Fresno is a 4-hour drive. And then you got to do
the whole time.
Yeah, you got to do a 4-hour drive. You got to find a gym. You got to be able to eat to stay in like peak bodybuilding-esque shape year round, and then you're missing your family. Like, I think that's incredibly difficult to do. So to see a guy like Taker coming in, and you can see it, like you can see the old wear and tear that wrestling has done to his body. And it's just something to where at the end of every match, regardless of if I'm excited to watch him wrestle, I just hope he's healthy after the match.
Yeah. Again, I'm more concerned with him making it through than about the quality of the match. Like, just, exactly. And that should never be your feeling watching wrestling. You should want to see, the spectacle of it, but it's just like, oh God, is this guy going to make it through? And you're right. That Roman Reigns match, for whatever people feel about Roman Reigns, you could see those guys were at two different levels going two different speeds. See it.
And for me, I'm a huge Reigns fan. I know a lot of people aren't. I think he's actually hit with the curse of John Cena in the sense where fans are booing him because they may not like him. Now, I personally don't see any value in turning him heel. I'm not one of these guys that thinks like the product's going to magically right itself if they turn him heel, because I don't think, one, WWE would know how to do it successfully, and two, I don't think those fans that are screaming for him to turn heel, I don't think they're going to do anything more for the WWE's bottom line if Roman's a heel. What are your thoughts on the way he's portrayed on TV on a weekly basis?
I understand why you surround him with Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. I understand why he kept the Shield music, he kept the Shield outfit, how he was coming through the crowd for a long time. I think he's presented just fine. I think he's presented like the most important guy on the show. I think that if you're making money hand over fist, your stock is as high as it's ever been, and he's the person that you want to write for, that's who you should write for. Like, I'm always, how some people really like the Super Bowl halftime show. I don't watch it too much. I think that, and me personally, I want to see some black people perform some black music, but that's me. You know what I mean? And that's 30 minutes of a 4-hour show. I think people who don't like Roman Reigns, you can just go do something else for 15 minutes. It's possible. But no, I think he's just fine. I think his matches are good. I think that when he's motivated, like he says some pretty good things. Like, I understand that, like you said with John Cena, I think he can be overproduced. I think he can appear a bit more than you like to. But I don't think it's a deal breaker. Like, I think he's just fine. And I also think that there's so much more going on that show that he doesn't take away from it. And if that's what the boss wants to write for, as long as we're getting the rest of it, I'm fine with that. Like, yeah, he's and there's some really good Roman Reigns matches out there. Granted, like, it's with an AJ Styles, it's with a Samoa Joe, but they're still good. So yeah, I think he's just fine, and I don't think he detracts from my viewing. And if you don't take away from what I'm saying, I like him just fine.
Yeah, I thought I just watched it when I was working out about 2 weeks ago. I just watched the match he had with AJ at Backlash or whatever the pay-per-view is right after WrestleMania. I think it was right after WrestleMania 33, if I'm not mistaken. But I thought that was an incredible match. Like, those two guys had a great feud. And yeah, you can give a lot of credit to AJ there and just say pretty much AJ can have a great match with anyone right now. But when Roman's in there with the right guy, and I think more often than not he is, I don't remember many bad Roman Reigns matches from a purely in-ring wrestling standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, there's the match with Taker, and that's really like, as far as being bad, like that's about all you got. This was pretty good.
And even the match he had with Brock at 31, I thought was the best of what they did as far as the story that they told. That was another one that we talked about this earlier with it not really being a rivalry. I'm glad to say that that's over. Let me just put it that way with Brock and Roman. I'm glad that that's over enough. Now I know Brock's coming back for the crown jewel in Saudi Arabia, which is essentially a cash grab. But I'm glad that part of the story is done and we can focus on Roman just being the guy.
Yeah, it was good to get over that hill. Like, I'm a big fan of Brock Lesnar. But those two, like we're talking about, not a lot of bad Roman Reigns matches. They were very one-sided. There was a lot of Brock doing suplexes, which is okay, but it doesn't. Roman's a big-time striker. He needs to move during the match, and Brock Lesnar's not generating that much movement in a Roman Reigns match. Now, you look at the Brock Lesnar AJ Styles match, you're like, oh God, look at all these things Brock Lesnar can still do. But I understand that was rare. And he probably looks at it like Roman Reigns is more my size. And so I'm going to fight him head up. I'm going to treat AJ Styles differently. So there's probably a different philosophy. But yeah, if I don't see that match again, I'll be just fine.
Yeah,
yeah, and I heard they get along really well. Like, of course, they probably made each other a ton of money, you know what I mean? But everybody just shouldn't compete with one another. Like John Cena and Jack Swagger had some really good matches together. Like, I recommend anybody who has a network, search those two names and look at the stuff that they did together. We would both agree that John Cena is a top tier talent, whether you like him or don't like him. He's a top tier talent. Same thing with Randy Orton. And you never want to see that match again. Nobody wants to see John Cena and Randy Orton wrestle together ever again. It's not because they're not good. It's just because you saw it so much. There was so little new that they could do that you just didn't want to see it anymore. And that's why they haven't wrestled in like 10 years. Just worthless.
Yeah, to me, that feud defined what I call the tout era, which is like WrestleMania 25 to WrestleMania 28. It felt like those guys were on every pay-per-view. Like, they had Iron Man matches. They had every stipulation imaginable. And you're right. I've seen every John Cena, Randy Orton match that I ever cared to see. Now, I think Orton, is finally getting back to working a motivated pace. I think I give him credit. Like, outside the ring, he has views I necessarily don't jive with. But if that was my barometer for liking everyone, I'm not going to like a lot of pro wrestling.
Yes.
But it seems like now he's working kind of a motivated style, working with Jeff, and I'm hoping he's doing something with Dillinger, because I am a big Dillinger fan. I think there's something to be said to a guy who just keeps clawing away and hasn't really been given a lot of opportunities. And I think, if Orton does a good job making Dillinger at least come across like a serviceable top tier, high middle of the card, Jake Roberts type range in the show, I think that'll be a good feat. But the one thing I think is impressive about Orton and Cena, especially Orton because he's there right now on sort of a full-time basis, you got to think Orton's been around for WrestleMania 19 to WrestleMania going on 35. And I don't remember a WrestleMania that he's missed. I'm sure someone will correct it if I can't think of it off the top of my head. But that's a hell of a run to have, even though, there hasn't been a lot of standout Randy Orton matches that you would, if you were to put a best of Randy Orton DVD together, it would take you a while. But
yeah, it's just him and RVD wrestling a bunch. Him, RVD, and Christian.
Yes, and the feud he had with Christian was great. I think, and I can say this because I'm rewatching this era of Raw right now. The feud he had with Mick Foley pre-WrestleMania 20, which I want to get into that WrestleMania in a little bit with you, but that feud in itself, that was such a good feud to legitimize Orton. Like, Foley really did a good job making Randy Orton seem like a top main event player.
Absolutely. He like the same thing he did with Triple H. Like,
yes,
Triple H was Triple H was big and strong, probably throw you across the room. Triple H was still finesse. Triple H was finesse. Randy Orton was finesse. Like they were good look. Triple H was good looking, long haired blonde guy who, ran with Shawn Michaels, who was like, even though Shawn Michaels was cool, Shawn Michaels wasn't cool in the same way that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were cool. Like it was like a juvenile cool. Shawn Michaels was like the coolest 10th grader, like he's a 10th grader that got to hang out with the upperclassmen. That's who he was. And then, Randy Orton was like this clean cut blue chipper, pretty drop kick, shiny tights. And, he gets in with Evolution. It still doesn't quite click, but him and Mick Foley, they get physical, man. Randy Orton has to go to different lengths to deal with Mick Foley. And yeah, really legitimized him. I'm kind of going forward from there. Absolutely.
I think if anyone who gets a chance to listen to this, watch the last 15 minutes of Monday Night Raw 557. I think it's the last one in January of 2004. And you're going to see a promo where, Mick Foley came back after Orton spit in his face, and Foley cuts this amazing promo where he talks about finding the hardcore legend again. And Orton's facials really do a good job driving that promo because he's definitely blown away by what Foley's doing, and it adds to the legitimacy of what Foley's saying. And I think, for as kind of stale as Orton has gotten in certain times, that early run of Randy Orton with Evolution, he was putting on great matches with RVD, tag teaming with Batista and Flair. So he definitely had a good talent. I think it got kind of stale, especially with Cena and, some of his runs on SmackDown, but the early Orton was really fun.
Yeah, it really was. And like I said, like you check out those Intercontinental title matches with RVD. Like that was just Randy Orton probably at peak athleticism before he knows all the tricks of the trade of the ring. Like that's really my era of Orton. He was just doing good stuff. Check out his Survivor Series run those 2 years where it comes out like him and Shawn Michaels. Like, yeah, and there's a lot of good young Randy Orton stuff. And he does seem to be motivated again. He's being gross. That's his thing right now. I'm gross. But and the thing that you can say about him, me giving Randy Orton compliments is funny.
Hell's freezing over later tonight.
Yeah, right. Probably nobody, and I really mean nobody, because we're talking. When you say WrestleMania 19, that's what, almost 26 years ago now, or 16 years ago. I'm sorry,
15 years ago. Yeah,
15 years ago.
Oh, I'm getting
very few people, even though he's bigger, very few people have maintained their physique that way.
Yeah.
Even though, like, hand to God, you can't convince me Randy Orton wasn't on PEDs. There was a stretch, and I couldn't tell you the year, but there was a stretch of about a month and a half on Monday Night Raw. And Randy Orton has how they film people is interesting. They film Randy Orton directly when he comes to the ring. The camera straight ahead, following him down the ramp. Randy Orton had at least 5 different bodies in a 6-week span. It was amazing to see. But that's not here nor there. But very few people have maintained their physique, their actual look, better than Randy Orton. It's really impressive.
And that's why I say I think pro wrestling is so hard, because I know you're working out pretty hard from everything we've seen on social media. And I know I'm training for these Spartan races. I got one coming up in 2 weeks. But just think of the amount of training that you and I are both doing on a day in, day out basis, whether it be nutrition, counting calories, going over our caloric deficit, going under, making time to hit the gym, and still thinking like, oh, we still got a ways to go. We still want to either shred body fat or shred mile times or add weight. And then think to have to do that and keep the physique that Orton has 365 days a year for 14, 15 years. To me, just that alone is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's a dedication to your craft. Like whatever it is he did or did not, put in or give up when that bell hit, he still showed up looking the part every single week. And that's crazy impressive. Very few people have ever done that and can do that. Remember the joke on Hulk Hogan was, I think Jay Leno said every time he saw him, his belt would get up higher. And like Hulk Hogan is one of those guys who notoriously, didn't have the best diet. And Randy Orton does seem to be of a different generation. Like you out there running with Triple H and Batista, and you're not going to put, other than liquor because you're kicking it with flair. You're not going to put a whole lot of bad food in your body. He seemed to hold on to that. So, his physique is very impressive.
Hogan's diet to me just struck me of a lot of beer. Every time I saw Hogan, I just saw a lot of beer.
See, he ate a lot of Burger King.
Yeah,
like that was like when his not. I don't know if he's married again or if it's his girlfriend, but when him and Bischoff were hawking that protein powder or whatever, like she said when she met him, she couldn't believe how much fast food he ate and still had that physique, and she wasn't being ironic. That's crazy.
I see his WCW era, and I just think, man, I wonder how many Coors Lights, like that whole NWO, black and white or black and red, when they were at its peak, like those guys just must have been funneling Bud Lights and trailers at that time frame.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
So I do want to get into WrestleMania 19 and 20 because I know we've talked about them on your podcast and on Twitter. If I was to tell you WrestleMania 20, what are some of the first things that come to your mind?
WrestleMania 20. First thing, Rock and Foley handicap match in his Evolution always sticks out to me. A lot of tag team matches. And then, of course, and it's weird. The thing that sticks out to me about the main event is Triple H had white boots.
Yeah, I found that to be so weird watching it back.
I love that though. Like that's as a comic book guy, I love like whenever there's like an annual or a different artist comes in and they like switch up the costume or go to a classic costume. So yeah, Triple H in those purple boots. WrestleMania 20 was to me, and we talk about 19, how much I love 19. It showed just how much talent that they have. To me, 20 was we have too much talent. We have to find a way to put all these guys in matches. What are we going to do? Like think about that. There was a match that had The Rock and Mick Foley as a tag team against 3/4 of Evolution.
And the Rock and Sock Connection lost.
Yeah, they did.
The honors.
There was, and what they had were there 2 tag team 4-way matches?
They had like tag team turmoil or something, and then
one was for the Raw titles, one was for the SmackDown titles.
They had like a 500-person cruiserweight invitational or open or something like that.
Ultimo Dragon.
Yes.
As an American wrestling fan, I don't know if there's a foreign cruiserweight wrestler that I respect more than Ultimo Dragon. He was one of my favorites when he was in WCW, and they couldn't get the damn ramp right, and so he slipped coming out twice. I was so offended.
Yeah, and what's funny about that show at the Garden, because usually at the Garden they would go through that really narrow entrance, but that was the first one at the Garden where I remember them kind of making like a themed entrance where it wasn't the normal one where they came out for WrestleMania 10.
Exactly. Like it was like, Ultimo Dragon keeps slipping. Like this isn't cool. But yeah, that was 20 to me it wasn't the coronation of John Cena, but that's when you knew that it was coming. Because he cheats to beat Big Show for the US title and everybody cheers. And it's like, okay, yeah, this guy's where they want him to be. It wasn't the same thing for me because I felt like I don't know, like the Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit moment at the end. I got it and I was happy for those guys to be in the position they were in. But again, around with guys who are sports guys, you see these 2 guys in the ring celebrating and they're twice as big as they were in WCW. Like, and I don't mean popularity, I mean physically.
Eddie's the one that sticks out to me.
Yeah, because Benoit was always kind of compact. His arms weren't long, and so like that. But no, Eddie was just huge, man. It's tough to look back on it. Like in the moment, it didn't affect me too much, but just knowing, man, that the things that they did to their bodies to get where they got, it's heart wrenching. It really is, especially when you know kind of a few years later how different it would all be.
Yeah, and see, the interesting thing about Eddie for me is, again, like you go back and watch his first debut, he's not in huge shape when he first debuts either. Like when he first comes in with the Radicals with Saturn and Malenko and all those guys, he's not in the biggest shape. But you look at like 20, the guy looks massive in comparison to where he ended. But I think it's one thing that with both of those guys, they worked so hard to get to the mountaintop. And then they got there, and I just don't think that the mountaintop was was what they might have thought it was. I think sometimes there's that myth of like, we're just going to get to the top of the mountain and get to the top of the mountain and get to the side, and they finally do everything to get there. And neither of those guys really had a great world title run. Like, I think Eddie's was significantly better, because that's why I was really interested about going back, because where I'm at in my timeline on Raw is right before Benoit wins the belt at WrestleMania 20. I'm about a couple episodes out, which I should probably get done by the end of this weekend. But I don't remember really anything that Benoit did as the world champ. And even with Eddie, like, Eddie had good feuds. Eddie had a good feud with JBL. He had some good matches with Batista. But I don't really remember much really standing out as like Eddie Guerrero world champion. Like, I think of Eddie Guerrero as entertainer more than I think of Eddie Guerrero world champion.
And even the Benoit stuff, like there's some good Benoit Shawn Michaels matches in there. That Benoit Randy Orton match where he lost the title is really good.
SummerSlam.
It seemed like the gold watch. You know what I mean? Like, we respect everything you've done. We know how hard you work. We also watched those matches with you and Kurt Angle. You know, I think they and even Benoit's, you know, the first night that he wrestles, Triple H literally says to him, "They say you're the best where you're from," and so they always treated him like that. And you know, WCW did that thing. They tried to put the title on him on the way out to get him to stay. They understood the value of Chris Benoit to a wrestling fan, maybe not to the worldwide audience, but yeah, Chris Benoit. I can't speak to things I don't know about. I know how I have these inclinations and feelings, but I can't speak to things I don't know about. What I can say is everybody who wrestled Chris Benoit seemed to have an affinity for him. And other than, you know, the end of Chris Benoit's life, everybody seems to love Chris Benoit. And so it's you understand why he's the type of person. You understand why Chris Benoit and not Hardcore Holly won the world title, which is not a knock at Hardcore Holly, but you don't hear people say the things about Hardcore Holly that they do about Chris Benoit, even though Hardcore Holly is a very good wrestler. You know what I mean? Like, there's a respect for him that extended past just what you saw in the ring, and they seem to appreciate that. They seem to understand the importance of that moment in the ring. But yeah, his title run happened to be at a time where Shawn Michaels reached his new peak, and Triple H is not yet at the point where, you know, this is before spinner titles. So we still got a bunch of Triple H title reigns after this, you know. I don't know, maybe if Chris Benoit was there 5 years earlier, it's different. Maybe it's not any different. But yeah, and on Eddie's side, you know, the biggest thing with Eddie was winning the title. And then probably that match with Kurt Angle. And other than that, there's not a lot to write home about.
Yeah, the one thing about the Eddie and Benoit, them getting the belts, is definitely it's a different time in pro wrestling, because it's something to where we're not really used to seeing those two guys getting main event slots, because those slots were always going to your Triple H's and your Shawn Michaels. And that was why I found so interesting about WrestleMania 20, because WrestleMania 20, Triple H tapped out clean in the middle of the ring. There wasn't any, you know, there wasn't
elbow pad almost at his hand. It was great.
Yeah, like that was clean in the middle of the ring. He did everything he could to get Benoit over, and I think that was definitely at a time where Triple H was not making guys by jobbing. I think he doesn't get enough credit for what he did with RVD and Kane, because those guys were prominent figures of Raw in 2003. I have my issues, especially watching it back with what happened at WrestleMania 19 with him and Booker, but I think that's been well documented. You know, you and I have talked about that on your podcast before.
Absolutely.
I think that was a miss. I don't know if RVD and Kane, I don't know how much more a heel champion could have done at that time for those guys more than what he did. I think the idea was to build Triple H as that next Ric Flair, you know, in the mode of like the champion travels, and he makes these other guys look great. He always ends up getting the victory. But I think around WrestleMania 20, Triple H really wasn't making guys the same way he made them, you know, the same way he made Cena at 22, or the same way that he helped make, you know, Edge, or the same way he played a huge part in helping to make Jeff Hardy when Jeff Hardy got his main event run So I just think it's interesting that that was really the first big loss that Triple H had in quite some time.
Yeah, and then like you said, like him and Jeff Hardy helped solidify Jeff Hardy as a single star. Think about what he did for Batista. So Triple H, well, for very valid complaints about him, Triple H was definitely in the business of making sure that there were main eventers, at least to feud with, but probably to be there after he was gone. So yeah, it wasn't like Benoit beat Shawn Michaels for Triple H's title. He very much beat Triple H.
And I think the symbolism of that, I think, is incredibly important. And that's, to tie that back to what we talked about earlier with the Brock and the Roman feud, I think that what Triple H did for Benoit was I think Triple H helped make Benoit the main eventer. And I think one thing that they've missed with this Brock feud with Roman is I don't think Brock did much to help make Roman look credible, especially in those matches, because those matches were really 90-10 Brock. And I think, the first match they had at 31, I think did an excellent job making Roman look like $1 million. Roman lost that match, but Roman was made that specific night with Brock. And I think, their match at 34 or at the Greatest Royal Rumble or even at SummerSlam, I didn't get the sense that Brock did a lot to help solidify Roman as that main eventer, where I think the guy passing the torch to the next guy generally does a good job at.
Yeah, like you said, 31 was them both being very athletic. This was after Brock was unstoppable Brock, after he did demolish Cena at SummerSlam, after he was, swatting Seth Rollins out of the air at the Royal Rumble. This is peak Brock. And Roman was the first guy who would go straight up with him. But yeah, as time went on, it was kind of like, you have a little brother. He was beating him down. I was at WrestleMania in New Orleans, and he was beating them down. It wasn't even close. And so, yeah, I think that I don't know if I'm not saying you're saying Brock's to blame. I just think that they stretched it out so far that they felt like they had to do different things every time. They couldn't make it Roman be incredible against him because they didn't know how often they were going to have Brock. They didn't have anything else to do with him other than be champion. So yeah, it was like there was money affected that a whole lot as far as what they could do with the story. And so, yeah, you got some beatdowns in there that did not help Roman Reigns at all. And the worst part about it was when you already have people kind of funny about him, you're not going to make him sympathetic by beating him up. Not with that crowd who wants blood. You're giving them what they want as far as him being whooped. That doesn't help your cause at all.
Absolutely, man. So I want to wrap this up because, I got to get to work. I know I've kept you for an hour, but last question I always want to ask people when they come on the show. What's the last thing you watched on WWE Network?
Oh, NXT.
Okay.
I watched this week's NXT. I can't stress how big I am on that show. I love a 1 hour wrestling show that's very focused. I love that Bianca Belair and Nikki Cross have an intriguing feud going right now that's going to finish on TV with a decisive winner. I'm the biggest proponent of Velveteen Dream.
Yes.
And, through the torch, we got to go to Access in a press capacity. So we get in there a half hour before everybody else. Nobody's on the floor. I'm setting stuff up, and he just walked by, and I'm like, hey. So I was like, I'm a really big fan. From an older guy to a younger guy, I want to see you win. He was just like, thanks. He was a real nice kid. And I think he has all the charisma. I think that it's weird, Ryan, and I think you have to be a certain age to really understand it. But you and I were in our 20s at the height of, your Daniel Bryans and your AJ Styles, who can do every move you've ever heard of.
Yes.
But when I look at Velveteen Dream, when I look at Patrick Clark, I see what you would see in a Hulk Hogan or Steve Austin or a Rock or John Cena. And it's not that he can't, because he literally can do every move you've ever seen, but it's a size about him. It's a way that he moves, the way he presents himself. It's the way people react to him being around. And I'm like, okay, he's got next.
Yes.
That's it. I love a Seth Rollins who is amazing and can do so many things. Seth Rollins doesn't have what Velveteen Dream has. And it's not a knock on Seth Rollins. It's different. That kid's a star. I love Tommaso Ciampa. and Johnny Gargano, and the way that their feud is told. Like, if Triple H is really at the helm of all these stories, he really gets what me as a mature wrestling fan, like, what I want to see. The way that feuds are, the way that women are presented, the way the tag team wrestling is presented, the way that the person in charge is quite literally in charge and people have to go through him. I love NXT. I can't stress enough. If you are a quote unquote old school wrestling fan, and used to your wrestling being straightforward in a shorter period of time with actual winners and losers and consequences and ramifications, NXT is what you watch. It's a fantastic show.
I couldn't agree more. So I'm going to get you out of here, man, but let people know where they can find you on Twitter, where they can find all your podcasts. Once again, what they are for people who aren't familiar. So yeah, man, the floor is yours. Let them know.
Yeah, really quick. Twitter, Seahawks, Ceehawk. Instagram is Seahawks, Ceehawk. You can find the Pro Wrestling Torch official Instagram at PW Torch. You can find myself, Travis Bryant, and Rich Fan. Travis being the host, Rich and I being the co-host of the weekly call-in show, the Pro Wrestling Torch East Coast Cast at Torch East Coast Cast on Instagram. You can hear me every week, 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central at eastcoastcast.com, talking about the week in wrestling, typically for 2 to 3 hours. It's a live call-in show. South Congress podcast, which is, it's my baby, it's my joy. Me talking to the best and brightest in Texas, me and my best friend, my man Peanut, just talking about what's going on in the world, reliving some high school glory days, telling some college stories we probably shouldn't, but we still like to put out there. And you can hear the South Congress podcast at soundcloud.com/South Congress, on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Podbean. Typically, every Monday morning is when you'll find the show for your Monday commute or whatever you listen during the week. Also on YouTube, you can go to South Congress with K, or just Cameron Hawkins on YouTube, and you'll be able to see a few of our shows in audio form, one of our most recent shows in video form, and going forward, expect way more videos. And if you are a Pro Wrestling Torch VIP subscriber, you can check me out at You, Me, and Wrestling, where I interview either a new, older, in-between wrestling fan about their favorite times and moments in wrestling and how they compare with wrestling today.
All right, man, cool. So you can check out all now 78 episodes of this podcast at gullyblanchard.podbean.com. Also available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play Music, all by searching Gully Blanchard. Rate, review, subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, GULLYBLANCHARD. All podcasts and all my wrestling writing is available at nocoastbias.com. You can also check out the writing I do about the Sacramento Kings at royalpain.com. Until next week, guys, it's been a really good week for shows. I've talked to Stephanie McCarroll from Fangirl Sports Networks, Cameron Hawkins as well today. Got a lot of cool things coming up next week. So until then, I will see you guys next week. Marcus, get well soon. Hi, Bear. Hi, Caden. See you guys next week.